Yeah. Yeah.
We'd like to call to order this Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, November 9th, 2021. Guess first of all, we need to excuse Chair Weston, and I'm a fill-in or a rent chair for the day. Ben has to do this, so. Anyway, we will begin with an opening ceremony. I'll do the pledge and the opening prayer, and then we'll go that one. All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Heavenly Father, we humbly bow our head before Thee this Tuesday evening to give Thee thanks for the blessings that we have. We're indeed grateful to sit on this commission to help with ideas and land use issues here in this beautiful city in which we reside. We're grateful for the city of Santa Clara and for the residents that reside here and the community and neighbors and hometown feel that we share here. At this time, we ask a special blessing that we'll be able to have open hearts and open minds as we go over some business, and we'll be able to make decisions in the manner that is best directed toward the well-being and the progress of the city of Santa Clara. We're grateful for this country in which we live and the opportunities and freedoms in which we appreciate and are able to practice. We ask a special blessing on this city that will continue in the direction and the progress that is best for the residents here, and we'll be able to make those decisions wisely this evening. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
As far as any communication or appearances, do we want to do introductions or?
We can do that. We can start with that. I don't see that anybody, I can't tell if anybody's on the line that would want to make citizen comment tonight.
It doesn't look like there's
Doesn't look
anyone.
like we have anybody out there, so I like that idea. We can go around.
Okay, yeah, we can.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'd love to start. So for the new guy, I guess everybody else somewhat knows me, Curtis Whitehead. I've lived in Santa Clara for pretty much my whole life. I grew up just on the other side. I went to school at Snow Canyon High School and love this area. I've been on the Planning Commission for a couple of years and still learning the do's and the don'ts of the Planning Commission, but it's been a great opportunity to be here and be a part of the ideas and what goes on here. So I really enjoyed it, but I just live over next to Snow Canyon High School in the new subdivision over there.
I'm James Call. I've been on the Planning Commission for a while and lived here in Santa Clara for about 11 years.
Great.
I'm Shelley Harris, and I've lived in Santa Clara for about 10 years, and have been on the Planning Commission about a year-ish. I don't know.
Okay.
How long have you been?
About the same, probably. I'm Ryan Anderson. I've lived here for 40 something years. Yeah, almost since I was born, but it's been a fun process. I've actually learned a ton. It's been fun working with the cities and seeing how they work. And I've probably been on about maybe a month longer than you,
Okay.
a little over a year.
Cody Mitchell, as I stated earlier, I am the new building official, recently employed by Ivans City. I was with Ivans for 20 years and I'm happy to be here in Santa Clara.
Go ahead.
Who are you?
Oh, I am Selena Nez. I have worked for Santa Clara about 5 years. I'm going on 5 years now. I grew up here in St. George, also went to school at Stone Canyon and enjoy working here, working with everyone and new people.
Training new people.
No, I don't like that.
I'm Jim McNulty. I've just been here about a month and a half. My parents have lived in St. George for just over 5 years, about 5.5. My wife and I relocated from, Salt Lake area. I lived in Sandy Draper for a number of years. And then the last 5.5 years, we lived in Lehigh where we built a new home because there aren't any lots in Salt Lake County. And sold that home and we made a change to move down here and be closer to family that lives in this area, in the Nevada area, Henderson, Vegas, as well as Southern California. So we're really excited to be here. We knew we would end up down here sooner or later, but with some of my family circumstances, my dad's health and others, we pushed that up, and we're really excited to be here and love Santa Clara and this part of the state. So thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be here. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, let's continue. Doesn't look like we have any public hearings, so that's always good that I don't have to be a part of that. And turn the time over for the discussion items. Jim, do you have that? Is that
I do.
you presenting?
Thank you. Cody and I are going to talk about this tonight. I wanted to let the planning commission know that we had this discussion in a work meeting with the council last Wednesday night. And we wanted to bring it to the planning commission also to start the discussion because this is an item or area in the code where there's been a lot of questions recently, a lot of interpretation, just an area that we feel that we need to amend and update the ordinance for the city. The intent there is what we're looking at. Again, it's just a discussion item. We're looking to create an ordinance which allows for clear and consistent standards, as well as review by city staff for wall and fences, because it appears, there's a lot of exceptions and if buts, therefore it can be a difficult read. And we do have some slides that we want to share with you tonight, just showing some examples. In no way did we go out and pick anybody's property to show as a bad example, the good, the bad, the ugly. But we do have some examples here. We have 12 slides. So we'll go with the first one here. This is a board that Cody cut to be 9 feet in height, right, Cody?
Yes.
Just so we could show you what that looks like. I guess I need to make that slide a little bit smaller so we can see it.
I would X
that, and then we'll reduce the slide size. I have to reduce it one more. Hopefully it'll fit. There we go. So this is a new home in the community, just down the street actually. And we just wanted to show you what an 8-foot wall looks like for residents. This is a new home that's under construction. And the property that we're measuring from is an empty lot adjacent to it that hasn't been built on yet. But this is what an 8-foot solid wall looks like in a residential setting. So that's just for reference. I'm going to go to the next slide and then back to that one. I'm sorry that I had to be your model and hold this. I really am.
Is that over 8 feet? Is that?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
So this is on Boomer's Loop in the hills. We've got the little circle there where there's a home, and then this lot adjacent to it, I believe, is their area where they have all the outdoor stuff. There's a sport court and
If we cut the 9-foot story pole so we could kind of depict. Right now, the ordinance allows a married retaining wall and fence block to go to 9 feet. We're getting requests from city manager, council, and mayor to allow a 9-foot wall within the property rights of an individual. So if right now it takes the property owners, the neighboring property owners concession, both parties have to concede to allow the 9-foot wall because 9 feet can be obtrusive. Before that wall can be built on property line. What the council and city manager are saying that once you move that onto your property line, you should be able to build a 9-foot wall if you desire. So that's the background behind the 9-foot story pole.
Okay.
But this wall right here would not comply with any portion of our ordinance because of the excessive heights of the retaining.
What we have is, it looks like a barricade, these concrete blocks or a pattern that's approximately 7 feet high and then a 6-foot solid wall above it. So we've got 13 feet here. the road boomers, there's a change in grade, you know, from left to right, north to south. But the wall increases in height as well, you know, as from the
So
low
on
side to the
theirs-
high, from
on
the high
theirs-
side to the low side, the wall's increasing.
In their yard, how high is that, do you think?
Well,
Or is that not an issue?
it's in their yard behind the wall, they have 6 foot of privacy, but
Okay,
they built this 7 foot retaining
okay,
wall.
that's the question.
And then done a terrace, which is only a couple feet deep, I believe, or, you know, this direction, and then 6 feet higher up. Is that your understanding, Tony? They're
Yes.
just creating a 6 foot space, but it's 13 feet high to get there.
Current code is 6 feet. A
We-
6 feet wall or 6 foot
feet,
wall?
unless you have consent of
Consent.
neighboring property owners, then you can go up to 9.
And then you can go up to 9.
And difference in the lot elevation.
And as far as retaining, what is the setback to go past that 6?
It's supposed to be a 1-to-1 slope.
Yeah,
So you should go up 6, back 6, up 6, back 6.
but this one doesn't do that.
And 6
Yeah,
is the maximum height of a retaining.
right.
And you can tell Jim's over 6 feet tall, and so a portion of this where it ramps is over 6 feet. So again, we're not using these as
No, but this was
just as
yeah.
examples.
So if, for someone to build that wall, do they have to get a permit to do that, or is that something they just did
Yes.
on their own after the fact and wasn't really permitted or wasn't?
Should have.
Obviously, it wasn't permitted or it wouldn't have been allowed, right? Or is that just?
I would imagine it was permitted. I'm not sure.
Because code talks about over 4 foot of retention requires engineering,
It
right? Isn't
does.
that what it says in
And,
code?
and that's what we're looking at here, you know, anything, a retaining wall that exceeds 4 feet has to be engineered, correct,
Right.
Cody?
Correct.
Right, and so this is definitely over 6 feet, the retainer here in this case is 7 feet, and then you've got a 6 foot wall above it. I'm not exactly sure if it was permitted or not, but it appears to be in violation because the two together are 13 feet tall.
Sure.
I mean, you're talking about a small section.
Yeah, yeah,
Because of the tapering of the road, as Jim stated earlier.
yeah,
It's just the next slide or this previous slide that it's kind of unfortunate.
so this is the house, so I'm right here, and this house right here
Uh-huh.
is the one that's kind of the confluence of all of this in the walls. I mean, we've got this retainer, we've got this wall above,
Plus
they're
you
kind
got
of down in a
slope.
hole,
Yeah.
they've got another wall
Wow.
here, it's a real hodgepodge.
Yeah.
So they just have a space that we must have been there at the right time, because 90% of the time, there's probably no day, you know, sun back here. We were there at lunchtime, so you can just see what it created here. For them to have their 6 feet of privacy because of the changes in grade, and that wasn't very well thought out probably at the time the subdivision was developed.
So there's also a practice, this probably doesn't
And you
happen.
can see there isn't much of that one-to-one.
Yeah, there's-
You know, there's
so-
nothing.
Some people just do it, and if they can get away with it, nobody catches them, then it flies, right?
I can't say that all the time it flies. Sometimes I have to modify it.
Yeah, but some people are like,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
we'll just do with a thing,
Right.
and if we
Yeah,
do it on
somebody-
a Saturday and they come
We're
on Monday, it's
looking-
grandfathered in.
Right, and that's why we're looking to amend the code and revise and update the ordinance, so it's clear
Yeah.
that they need to come in and talk to us before they build this.
Yeah.
We do have a fence permit, it's a very minimal fee, but it allows us to review it
Sure,
and say yay or nay. So do you want to talk to us now, or do you want to talk to us later when we get to stop work, because they built it over a weekend?
Yeah.
Most time, it's not gonna be done in a couple days, we're gonna catch it when it's under construction, so. Did you have a question?
No, I was just gonna say, are there ramifications if somebody was to dump a wall, say in 24, 48 hours and house is all done, they have their CO and they put a wall up after the fact, there's not really any ramifications against the landowner, is there, if they do it?
Oh, absolutely. We could red tag the job still at that point and they could be forced to modify it.
But say it's completed, say they have their CO on their house, they don't have a fence permit, they just have some buddies that.
at grandma's
still have a-
house, they show up at Grandma Whitehead's house and throw it up in the weekend, all her and her kids.
Yeah.
It still doesn't make them exempt from city ordinance. They still have to comply with city ordinance. So if they are not compliant, then we could go red tag it
We
and
can stop
then
work
modify.
and make them remove
If the
it.
work's complete, you
Oh,
would,
you can actually make them
absolutely.
take it
We
down,
could.
interesting,
Yeah.
okay.
I don't know if it's class B or class C misdemeanor, and there's fines on a daily
Okay.
basis, but we can
Interesting.
make them remove it.
Yeah,
We just have
the
to involve code enforcement as well. I
the
think.
fencing
So,
permit's very reasonable. It's $5. There's no reason not to comply.
Yeah,
You guys will even spot some people that.
and
I guess that's an
Selena knows the
issue.
history there, we got that, that's what St. George does as well, right? It's a $5 review fee.
Wow,
They have, they're blowing up with development, so I don't know how much they're doing it.
Sure.
But we're doing it here. We have a lot of permits as well. So this example I wanted to show you, it shows a good example of 2 lots in Rome subdivision.
Yep.
You've got a high side and a low side. So what we talked about, the 6 foot and the 9 foot. So this side, you got finished grade here, you got a relatively flat lot. This wall's at 6 feet. If we scroll down and you see, you know, the center, the property line here,
Mhm.
and we go to the other side, I think this is a great picture. This shows the 9 feet. So this side is 9 foot with the footing. And so you can see one side, they get a lot more privacy. They're getting 9 feet of privacy because they're at a lower grade, and the other side is getting the 6 feet of privacy. And I can show you here, here's our marker, and it's approximately 9 feet. You know, if I move that around, there's other portions that would probably go to that cap. But the result is that 9 foot fence, which currently is allowed if you get consent of the property owner, right?
Correct.
The 6 and the 9. But I think we have quite a bit of this throughout the city, you know, relatively flat lots, and you get that grade of 2 to 3% from the back of the lot to the front of the lot to have that driveway slope from where the home is. So I think we'll see a lot of this. Cody, what's been your experience with this? Is this what you've seen a lot in Ivans? Is this familiar to you, or?
Well, yes, the low side, 9 feet, they have plenty of privacy. And it depends on their view corridors, right? In areas where you have a view, otherwise it's obtrusive to some degree, or people invite this willingly. But the one thing this offers is anyone with a lot different, or a difference in grade up to 3 feet, anyone can have a 6 foot fence.
Yeah.
So with conceding neighbors, otherwise they can still retain on the lower lot. And the language we're looking at adopting is you move that wall inside and you build your 6 foot or even up to a 9 foot wall with the new language that will be proposed in the rewriting of the ordinance.
So in this case, this neighbor on the right has to approve this wall. They have to,
Right
right? So
now.
when they do the wall permit,
Well, even after the rewriting, if you're doing a shared wall on property line, both property owners have to concede in writing.
and if they don't concede, how high can that wall be?
6 feet.
6 feet.
So it's
Yeah.
6 feet here, so
From
it'd
the
be
whole
3
spot.
feet on the,
Mhm.
on the
Yeah,
left side.
and the tough thing is there, everybody with this one, you know, folks are, I mean, that's the norm, a 6 foot privacy fence. You
Yep.
know, that you have 6 feet of privacy
Yep.
in your side and rear yard,
Yep.
you know, once you meet the setback of the home.
Yep.
You can see this here in that front yard area, that first 15 feet, you have to have a lower wall.
Sure.
A solid wall is 3 feet.
Yep.
If it was opaque or open, 50% open, like a wrought iron and block, it could be 4 feet.
Okay,
But the norm, you know, if you hire someone, a contractor to build a wall and they do block walls, they're gonna do the 3 foot and then go up to the 6 foot. So you can see here, the existing homes here have a 6 foot wall.
Mhm.
So if I go down to this slide, you can see that here.
Yep.
You know, you can really see that, and you can see it even more in this slide, that they've got the 9 foot here for these many panels, 100 feet, I don't know what the depth is, whatever it is, but then it transitions back to a 6 foot back here. Because that's an existing wall that was already, I assume, here for these homes. Unless it was just put in, maybe it is newer, I don't know, but you can see the 6 foot that they have in place there.
sure.
I guess technically, if they talked to their neighbor and both sides agreed, they could do a higher fence there as
Yeah.
well, Cody.
Right, one of the things the ordinance requires is difference in lot
Yeah.
elevation, so you have to have it, currently you have to have that.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
if someone just desires a 9 foot wall, currently by the ordinance, they cannot do it unless there's a difference in
Okay.
grade.
So only one person can have 9 feet.
Yeah, so you might get one person with 6 and one person with 8, it depends on the grade, or in this case, it's 6 and 9. But they can't just create a man-made grade to try to get that wall height, they can't just go out there and do that.
I've got a question. So on the way to the hills where you took the pictures, there's those concrete retaining walls along the side of the road. You know what I'm talking about?
Mhm.
And eventually those are gonna have houses on them, and those
Yeah.
are what, 6 or 8 foot tall retaining
They're
walls.
pretty tall, yeah.
So if someone at some point is gonna buy those lots above them and wants to put a privacy wall on top of that retaining wall, and I'm assuming those walls are already engineered and
Yeah,
what's the code gonna be for them? Are they gonna have to set back? You know, they're not gonna be able to put a wall right on top of that wall. They're
No.
gonna lose a lot of yard.
So it's one
Plus,
to one.
it's mandatory they're gonna have to have a fence because that's a fall issue too, right? So they're gonna have to have a wrought iron. Can they do a 6-foot wrought iron fence on top of that wall?
Most likely in that case, because that's, I mean, it's not rare because
Right.
there's hills and valleys
Yeah.
throughout Santa Clara. But there's going to be a clause that's currently in the ordinance that kicks it back to you guys to say, okay, this falls out of our bounds to approve this fence out of the 1-to-1 slope, as you recall.
The fence over 9 feet.
Then
has
it
to
comes
go
back to
the
the planning commission
For
for
review.
approval, for review and approval. So if you don't like it, if Mrs. Ginsburg wants to come in and put a 6-foot wall on that 8-foot retainer, you're like, no, that doesn't look right, then it falls to this body.
I see.
But they tried to make those site ready or pad ready or built because of some of issues in the past where people bought a lot, but they couldn't build on it because it was that issue.
Right.
With sloughing
I
and
get-
grade and everything else.
I get that. That's gonna be,
Yeah.
yeah, if someone's driving up,
Yeah.
you have that you got a little bit of a slope and you got a 6 or 8-foot retaining
Right.
wall, and then you're gonna have another 6-foot wall on top of that. It's gonna
Right.
not look great, but again, you
Right.
have the, I don't know, the fell issue too of
Yeah.
a lot of weight on that.
And we're gonna have to look at that because if they have a 6-foot wall and they're willing to do 1-on-1. And there's something that could go up above, let's say maybe they split the difference, like part of it was solid and part of it was open.
Yeah.
I don't know, but any of these really high walls are gonna have to come back to the planning commission.
I would assume they're gonna want some sort of a slatted wall or something to see
Okay.
through, because they're not gonna wanna block
Well,
the
it is a
view.
safety issue, you're
Yeah.
completely right, but they have unimpaired views. I mean, each one of those way they're stepped
Yeah.
up that road, there's, you know.
I just thought of that when we were talking about that. You know,
Yeah.
that does create a lot of
And
wall.
we saw that one, and we
Issues
didn't
too.
see pictures of that one
Well, it's
because
my
there's a lot of
understanding-
people that have brought that up.
It's our understanding that that came back to the planning commission for approval.
I will have to go back
I
and
don't
see, I don't
remember,
know.
I don't
Somebody-
remember that, but I know they
I
talked
don't
about
know.
lot splits. Maybe that was before my time.
Yeah,
That
we
could have
did
been-
talk, about those retaining
The
walls.
hills,
Uh-huh.
yeah, is that phase 3 of the hills or phase 2?
It is 3.
Okay.
Because
And they're
I
still
asked
working on
questions.
improvements, they don't, go ahead, I'm sorry,
It's okay. I can.
you're next, go ahead.
I was just wondering if you eliminated or are proposing to eliminate the language of bottom of footer to top of fence that they were telling us about when we talked about this before.
We're actually going to strengthen that language. Because the mayor has asked us to go by the code, and the code exempts fences under, so if you just have a privacy fence under 7 feet tall, it doesn't require a permit. And if you have retaining wall measured from bottom of footing to top of wall, 4 feet or less, it doesn't require a permit. So we're going to strengthen that language and enforce to that language. Now, keep in mind, it won't require a permit. However, we strongly are going to advise people to come in and get a review, so we don't have you putting up a fence for Mrs. Whitehead on the Saturday and having to modify it. So, yeah, it's across the county, it's pretty notorious that people just take the surcharge against the wall and consider that 4 feet. But the mayor was specific in giving us direction to follow the code.
But do they apply for some of these walls, Cody, will they be applying for a building permit? Or?
If the retaining is 4 feet or
over
higher,
4
then
foot,
yes,
and the wall, if wall's over 7,
and the developed length of,
that's it, yeah.
yes, over
That's
7.
right. And I know that, we talked about that last week.
Does the city verify, I guess they don't really care about property lines, that's between the two landowners to determine?
It's a civil matter, and really, I mean, in
Is
the
that-
newer subdivisions, we've got the pins, the survey pins, or you would think that 2 property owners that are making an investment like this would know where the property line is. But it happens. I worked in Sandy for 11 years, and we ran into that all the time where folks had a fence built. And the 2 property owners knew it was a foot or 2 off, but they were friends and agreed to a handshake. And then one moves and the new owner moves in and he says, hey, I want my 2 feet back. I'm taking you to court. So it is a civil matter, but right now in the newer areas like Roan, they should know where that property line is because the pins are in place still. But that is a civil matter. I mean, it is if the property line, if they're off. We would encourage them to, if they don't know, to have a survey done, but we can't make them do that.
Gotcha.
So. I don't know, what has been your experience, Cody, with fence companies
Santa
and their
Clara-
accuracy?
Yeah, Santa Clara's made them do a survey.
Have they?
and compaction testing, and there's a few things that we're going to eliminate from the requirements. We definitely want to know if both parties agree whether they're splitting property line or not. If they're not, then they need to make sure it's on their property. If they're not clearly identified, then
Yeah.
strongly advise them to get them.
I've even
Surveyed.
seen it with the pins where when it's done, they find out years later it's off by a foot. You know, I mean, I don't think that's common, but those were homes built in the 80s and 90s. I'm sure nowadays there's more accuracy, but you just never know. So, next slide. Again, I'm sorry, we just wanted to see what 6 foot looked like. I'm actually 6'2", but anyways.
That's a great
just giving
outfit
you
you
an
had.
idea.
That looks
I don't
really
know,
good.
it looks like almost the same shirt I have on today, but it's a different
Yeah,
color.
no, you have great.
I was just thinking the
You're nice.
photographer's doing excellent work.
No,
Yeah,
and the
I think the
photography
photographer's
is,
doing
it's
excellent work.
Photographer's no chump there.
Yeah. So this is an example of one on lava. I wrote the street name down to say
Lava Cove.
Lava Cove.
Lava Cove Drive,
Yep,
which is interesting because cove is usually a cul-de-sac or a circle,
Yep.
but this one's Lava Cove Drive. And we wanted to show you an example of a corner lot. So just eyeing this, to me, that looks like a 6-foot wall. When you walk up, you know, to the property, you find out it's actually an 8-foot wall. So that section's 8 foot tall. This is Cody asking me, should I stand straight forward or side profile, or which is my better side? I said, does it really matter? I'm a middle-aged chubby guy, just take the picture. So we had a good time out there.
so I think when you have a nice outfit, it doesn't matter really which way you stand. So that's interesting because the other
Yeah.
wall, when you showed that picture, the other wall looks lower. That right side looks
Yeah.
lower on the other side
So
of the
he has
driveway.
built this up with Phil.
Yes.
They were all that size and he built that whole thing up for landscaping purposes,
Yeah.
cause he put in
Yeah.
plants and.
Yeah, where we have a concern is he's got this here and I realize that they built this up because you've got the sidewalk grade. And then you have some landscaping that's been built up here to get closer to the wall. But this corner lot, you know, the home faces the other street, and then this is you know, a garage building or an accessory building. This is a standard interior lot next to it. And so right here, this wall exceeds 3 feet, that first 15 feet back. You know, we've got on his side, even though the grade's been brought up for landscaping, we've got a 6-foot wall. And here it's an 8-foot wall, so we don't have that 3-foot site visibility area that's required 3 feet back. Because not everybody's in a truck or a Jeep, a lot of people are in passenger cars, so that's our concern here. It appears to not comply with the ordinance. Cody, what were your thoughts?
Well, one of the things that came up in city council was this isn't the primary drive.
Right,
This is a drive that will be used once a month, twice a month, depending on the use and
yeah,
who lives there. If it's my garage and it has a boat in it, it probably only gets pulled out, say 3 times this year, which is just terrible. And I need
that's
to
a
do
big
better.
investment for 3 times a year. You know?
But the other challenge you would have is the ordinance states you cannot artificially adjust the grade to accomplish a higher fencing. So he would have that challenge, and then he would be with the corner lot restriction, he could have 6 feet if he was set 5 feet behind sidewalk, so. And then some site visibility, so we would, the mayor advised us to not really consider this so much as the primary drive and the site visibility angles. Where it is a temporary use, but looking at a primary, considering this is a primary drive, absolutely pedestrian traffic need to be considered when pulling out of here.
Right,
So those are things that we will.
but what's happened is this wall, it appears he's got his 6 feet of privacy on the inside. But
Right,
then the wall's taller on the outside.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you get that sidewalk grade and road grade quite a bit lower when you have rear facing lots. It's not really the case here because there's access. We didn't talk about it, but Cody, I mean, is this a situation, and this isn't walls and fences, but should he have a curb cut with a driveway? with a
I'm
drive
sure
approach
he
here?
will. I'm
Yeah.
sure that he'll get an encroachment permit and take care
Yeah.
of that. You
Yeah,
can
he's
see the
nervous,
difference.
cause I live in this
Okay.
neighborhood and he's nervous about the heavy, cause he's putting a pool in, and that brings
Oh.
another
Oh.
issue is if he has to knock that down 3 feet or 4 feet, now it's not gonna be compliant for a backyard pool, because you have to have a 6-foot wall to pass code if you have a pool, so.
From the outside in.
Yeah, so it makes
I don't
stuff,
think we would go back and make him change
well, I'm
that.
just
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
if he
yeah.
was applying for a permit,
Right.
and you guys say, now it's not working,
Yeah, and we're working on that too, because there's some contradiction in the pool code.
Right,
The commercial code requires 6 feet and Santa Clara is just stuck to the 6-foot rule for pool barriers. The International Pool and Spa Code, which we will adopt, states that on a residential pool, it only requires 4 feet.
Interesting.
But then there's also, we're entertaining language to say that a powered pool cover that's rated for foot traffic could be used as an element in lieu of a barrier.
yeah.
So,
I prefer they use both,
right.
but that code.
And alarm the doors and
allows
ripples and
option,
anything
yeah.
to protect them, but
Yeah.
Lifeguard.
But it's
doesn't-
4
it doesn't
versus
take long.
6, and this section of ordinance 1728 addresses what you just brought up, and we'll be revising that as well to be compliant with what Cody's talking.
I mean, just looking at this wall, you see the wall on the right where it has been softened with the landscape, a little burr,
Right.
which I've already stated it wouldn't be compliant. It's much softer, more appealing for my eye than the wall on the left that it's a full 8 feet.
Yeah.
You can see how it softens it just by shallowing of the height of the wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
So things to consider.
And
as we-
so,
as we
we
read this ordinance.
just went out and took some pictures one afternoon of some things that, came to eye. We have about a dozen slides. We took more, but this is what we wanted to share with
Okay,
you.
what is the code on the side yard for fence setbacks? I get that you have to be 6 foot back on your front, or is it more than that? Is it
Are
20
you
feet back?
talking about the side yard
On a
interior
corner,
or
on
side
a corner lot, yeah, on a corner lot,
Yeah,
your front door and your garage and everything are on the front of the house, and then you do have around to the side, so you have
Yeah.
a fence to fence in your backyard. What is the
Yeah.
code? How far back does that have to set off the street?
Well, if you desire a 6-foot fence like this
you have a
residence,
side triangle issue.
you have a
Yeah.
side triangle issue, but you can get up to 6 feet and after you leave the front setback, so 25 feet, come back behind the front setback, you can go to 6, so long as you're 5 feet behind or off of your property line, which is typically 6 feet, because there's a foot.
But you,
The city reserves a foot.
but he has to stay out of the visibility triangle.
Right, well, you can't be
That 30
6.
by 30 triangle, you draw that line and your 6 feet can be behind that, correct?
Correct, but I think your question was just for 6-foot side yard or all?
Side yard, yeah, so if somebody has a house and they have this, how much of that side yard, they don't have to meet that 25 foot setback on the side and the front for a wall. So they could,
It's 5
utilize
feet.
more of their
So this-
yard and have it fenced in.
Right, it is 5 feet, so 5 feet, just like if he has 5 feet behind sidewalk, which he does, then he can have 6 feet all the way down to the front setback.
I see.
And now if he wants to utilize all this property, he can come out onto property line with a solid 3-foot fence, or open fencing can be 4 feet. So if it's 50% or more.
What if right there on the side is your neighbor's driveway, just right there?
Right,
Then he has site visibility issues, he's gonna have to
Yeah.
chop that corner.
then that's the issue there,
So
because
it's gonna
if
be
the
3
driveway
feet.
lies right there, you gotta bring it down.
But then
because
typically the
then-
driveway is going to be at least 10 feet in because of the side setback.
Yeah,
So the main driveway, that typically won't be an issue because the triangulated areas, we're proposing 12 feet. Where you'd go up the driveway 12 feet and along the property line 12 feet, and then that area, we wouldn't allow anything over 2 feet in height in that area. So if the driveway were fronting the home with a 10-foot setback, that's not going to be an issue.
so Cody, what you're explaining, I think it would, next time we come back to have that diagram so we can show it to them.
Sure.
I think that would be real helpful. But you got your side yard interior that we're talking about,
Right.
but a side yard, I call it, a corner lot to me has 2 front yards, right? You've
Right.
got this road and this road. We call it, side lot interior and then side lot something else, but to me, it's 2 front yards. So that is more restrictive in this case because he's a corner lot on 2 main public roads. In this case, and then
is
the
true.
interior can comply with what Cody just explained on the other side next to the house.
It's a challenge, and it'd be
Yeah.
even more challenging to ask us to write an ordinance that would pertain to every situation.
sure.
And it's just impossible, and that's why the caveat will be in there to pass it on to the planning commission for anything that falls out of the.
So we're trying to, get that to be a better document that's more understandable for homeowners, builders, developers, fence companies, because right now it just kind of seems to be all over the place. And I know the planning commission, you had some discussions this past summer on some of this as well.
So a few more items that we've been asked to clean up. One is the code,
Right,
that our ordinance needs to follow the code, so I've addressed that, the 7-foot and the 4-foot rule.
right,
Permitting, they've talked about how much to charge for a permit. Well, the code gives us language that
Right.
The permits are exempt if they fall under 7 feet fence block and 4 feet retainer. And then we've been asked to entertain the 9-foot wall once all of the wall is on property line.
Mhm.
And then the last thing is to compare our fencing ordinance against the developmental standards so that they coincide.
It seemed like the last time we met too, we talked about this and there was some issues with retaining walls in certain heights with retaining walls on, I think if you build it out of what's called a segmented block,
Mhm.
there was different standards
Like
that if
that
it's a solid
block system.
concrete block,
Yeah.
and every kind of material, it seemed like it had to be, if it was over 3 feet, it had to be engineered, if it was over 4 feet, it had to be engineered. And they were coming up with some different scenarios. I don't know if you remember that, but I was really confused. I mean, they probably should do, I mean,
Yeah, we're just looking at one.
standardized,
standard.
yeah, like
Yeah,
4 foot plus has to be engineered,
Right.
4 foot under does
Right.
not, as long as it's.
and that's the way I've always understood it.
That's the way-
4
me
foot
too.
or exceeds, that's an engineer.
And I think that's what code
So,
says right now. It just uses
Yeah.
that 4 foot as the,
Yeah.
that's what I was.
Yeah,
It does, but it'll essentially be 3 feet of wall because we will have to consider the foot of footing.
right, right.
Maybe that's what it was.
So that's been, like I say, it's pretty consistent across the county that they say if there's a surcharge of 4 feet or more. And also the code has that language, if there's a surcharge that is deemed in excess of for a 2-foot wall, which would be very rare, that could kick it into engineering. Depending on what loads you're holding back with this wall.
So you're saying the foot buried counts as part of your 4 foot wall?
Yeah,
It's
the
not just an
code-
exposed 4 foot, it's,
The code reads you measure from the bottom of footing to top of wall.
So
you
if
only
it
have a
exceeds
foot of-
4 feet, but it only may be 3 feet above surface, but then they can go higher than that too.
But that's for
Yeah.
retaining only, it's
Retaining
not.
only.
retaining, yeah, this pertains to
This
retaining.
is just when it does not require a permit. So retaining systems from bottom of footing to top of wall in excess of 4 feet will require a permit, which kicks it into engineering. And fences, developed height, doesn't say from bottom of footing, so the height of a fence exceeding 7 feet. So that would require, and 7 feet requires engineering too, so. And typically it's married up with a retaining wall.
Yeah.
So it's going to
Yeah.
kick it to permitting and engineering. So if somebody wanted to come in, this is why Ed wants to do a 2-foot retainer and a 5-foot fence block, you would not have to have engineering or a permit. Very wise of you to come and see Jim or myself and make sure that, or have it reviewed and make sure it's compliant with city ordinance.
Which can just take a few minutes.
Does it say anything right now about material? What is considered a retaining wall and was not? Because obviously block and that big concrete that they have is retaining. What about lava? Like if they do big boulders, is that,
Well, if
Stacked rock or,
yeah, does that fall under this same ordinance that now you have to go to 1-to-1 after that, or can you build your wall right up on that?
So rock retaining walls are fairly common.
And
I
that's,
I have one.
Yeah.
But
it's only when you exceed 4 feet.
yeah,
I mean, now you have I guess you could say you're going to bury maybe the half of the first rock. So it'd be from wherever your bury point is to 4 feet developed height. But then you're going to have to involve a geotech to review the stone, make sure the stone, so you don't have the Castle Rock incident where the stone started dissolving and breaking down. That's soft, yeah. And so, yeah, it would be the same parameters, and we would follow the 4 feet.
well, that's interesting, because you look at that subdivision where I live down on the north of the high school football field,
mhm.
and that is all lava retention, like the big boulders, and they're retaining that, some of them 8 to 9 feet tall, and then they go back 4 feet, and then they go up another. So it's,
I imagine that went in with the development or with the homes.
that was with the development.
So I imagine that on the development side, Jim and I are pretty well private property.
Right.
But on the development side, when they come in with their construction drawings, that they're dealing with engineering, geotechs to build those walls.
And
There's just too much liability there.
Dustin's reached out to us on some of that issue, or in public works, and probably our code stuff, this is city ordinance, land use ordinance, land development code. His are standard specifications and details that developers have to build to, but we're looking to mirror that language and make them consistent So what we come up with is what a builder should be told to do for the overall development. If they're required to put in a wall for 12 homes along the back half or whatever, then it should meet the standard rather than something
Clear,
different. And clear.
understandable.
Yeah. I bought a home with a 6-foot retainer and I made sure it was engineered and stamped that I got that before I bought the home. We tried to find a home in Santa Clara. I struck out 1 for 3 and ended up in St. George. We love it. I'm only 7 miles away, but I have a 6-foot retaining wall. And I wasn't gonna buy it without a stamped engineered plan because I know there's liability. So I hope people would know that. So this picture, and I'm gonna explain a little bit what the mayor had to say about my last 2 pictures. This is on Pioneer Parkway. You'll probably recognize it. This is these homes are rear loaded in the wall, onto Pioneer Parkway. You can see that it's 9 foot total. You can see the concrete retaining below with the block system above. I didn't peer over the fence, but I know what they've done here. It's been their attempt, or these walls were put in with the intent of giving 6 feet of privacy to the property owners behind.
Where you can see where
Yeah.
the
Right.
dirt has built up on the backside. You can
That's
see
right.
how far they built that.
That's right. And the mayor said, the walls we have there are a result of the homes being built first and the road being put in later. Is that right, Cody?
That's what he said.
That's what he said when we discussed it with him last week, and you can see it.
And you
here.
can see, if I can.
So here you can see the road's gonna go this way and this way, but the last one, this is really interesting, what you see here. Yeah,
You can see that they put the homes in first,
Yeah.
because this is 8-inch block, you
Yeah.
can see there's a lid there.
So, I'm sorry, Ryan. And then from here up's a 6-inch block. So this is a retaining block. And then of course the concrete's retainer. Had you put the road in first, you shift that. So you have a shear wall and you get rid of that lip.
Right.
Just a common.
right, and by current code, the mayor was quick to point out that they would require, landscape buffers also required. So if someone were to do rear loaded homes on an arterial, with a wall, back facing, they have to have a landscape buffer, then the sidewalk, then the wall to create, some safety between the road and the home. Not that it's not safe, but we did notice when we got out of the truck, man, people are really moving on this road. And they didn't care who we were. They were just buzzing back and forth. But as I walked down the hill a little bit, you run into this situation. I mean, look at that. I mean, that's 8 foot tall. And then you have a block system, and then, you have that landing area and then more blocks and some iron, metal railing. And then here we have more block with metal railing. And really people are just trying to gain 6 feet of privacy. That's what they had to do for this lot, and this home's even higher. And there's other examples, but then again, we would look at this a lot closer now, and they'd be required to have that landscape buffer, which I believe the mayor said was 15 feet, and then the sidewalk, and then the wall system. But still, this is not something that we want, to allow in the future, nor would we. We just brought it up as kind of the ugly. We have some pictures here of things that we want to prevent or avoid.
Yeah, this picture, it derived a lot of questions regarding finished materials and consistency in finished materials. And that's when the mayor stepped up, said our current practice wouldn't allow this anyway.
Right.
With the softening and the retaining wall, 4 foot stepping and buffers. And so you wouldn't see this in Santa Clara anyway. So outside of just one spot.
Well, this is St. George, so we're lucky. on this.
Right, that's right.
Is
Coming
that
off the
St.
top.
George?
This is St. George.
Oh,
Once
yes.
you pass the
That is the corner, once you
Yeah.
go past Lava
Yeah.
Cove.
So, yep, so you go all the way
Yeah, that's
to,
right.
well, there's a power line.
It goes like
Yeah.
that, there's a
Okay.
jog right there.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why this looks like
That's why it
that,
looks
it's
like-
St. George.
That's why there's 6 different materials.
Yeah, you never.
I'm in a newer area.
I'm actually reading a book right now called Open Gaza. It talks about the Gaza Strip
Oh, wow.
and architecture there specifically. So it's funny when I see that 8-foot wall and some of those big things. That's a huge, there's a huge psychological issue with having big walls like that. First one you showed with that,
Mhm.
the bomb thing on the bottom, and then the top was
It
the.
kind of
retaining
looks
wall.
like that. It kind of looks like Utah barricade. The barricade.
Yeah, up there on the freeway.
On the freeways,
Yeah.
the roads when they shut them down.
This looks like
Yeah, it
the
just
army
kinda looks like
barracks
that,
right
yeah.
right behind that thing.
Yeah,
You could put the army guys right there because nobody's gonna be able to get their
no,
suicide bombers
No.
through that thing.
right. And you can see this one's a little bit different. You've got the park strip and sidewalk. This is just a standard local road in a subdivision, but you can see there's more of a buffer, but the block and the wall presented, you know, it doesn't mean it's 13 feet tall.
No, and it's unattractive too for the neighbors, right?
That's what we thought too.
Yeah.
You know, that material.
No, it would look a lot better because they have a plant strip in front of the sidewalk, which is just gravel, which
Yeah.
they probably should, if they had plants or trees in that, it would definitely make that look a lot.
Yeah,
better.
it'd really soften
Yeah,
it a
it'll
lot.
soften
Yeah,
it.
you could really, and even it looks like there's even a little lip right here, maybe,
There is.
you know.
It's
where
only a couple feet though, so it's
Yeah.
not like 5-6 feet. It's like about 2 to
Well, you
3
could do
feet
what you
maybe
did in
above
your
the
St.
wall.
George
You
picture,
could,
which is,
you
what
could.
what's that
Yeah.
herb called that they plant? It grows wild here.
Rosemary.
Rosemary. That hangs off of that real
Yeah,
nice and it's
yeah.
really resilient. It
Yeah.
covers, to me, that covered with rosemary looks better than
Right.
the assault wall.
It comes down to a maintenance issue though, because it probably
That's true.
technically owns or belongs to the owner on the other side of the higher wall.
Yeah.
Right.
And then it gets neglected.
And I
So
think what
it-
we're.
Yeah, it would look
Yeah.
better with some greenery there.
It would,
But
and
it's a
it
maintenance
could
issue that
be,
you cannot enjoy.
right, it could be drought tolerant, desert scape, you know, zero
Sure.
scape, not zero, because I see some
Yeah.
people say zero scape. But we have a number of employees at the Water Summit tonight over at the Dixie Center, and they're talking about that, you know, looking at kind of a model ordinance. I don't know if all the communities will adopt the same ordinance, but what it's going to do is limit sod and grass areas and, you know, let you drip to trees and plants. And so that, you know, so the days of the all grass park strips are probably behind us, and I think people will change those. We want it to be, you know, pervious though, not impervious, because I ran into this in Sandy City when I was there. We started having folks calling and asking what they could do in their park strip. And we said, okay, you can do other things. Some people took it upon themselves just to rip it out and pour concrete. That's a problem because then it becomes parking and then it's just hard surface that's hot and doesn't help shade or anything. And it looks unsightly, so we don't want that. But people parking trailers and 4x4s on their park strip and sidewalk, oh, now it's 10 feet wide, right? I can just park up there, so yeah, we don't want that. And I don't think our residents would want that, so. I think, you know, we just wanted to have a discussion with you tonight and talk about this and kind of get your thoughts and ideas, because we want to come back with a rewrite of 1728 because it needs to be redone. It just, you know, isn't good now, and we've been directed to do so. So Cody and I have been working on this for a number of weeks. The mayor, the council, city manager, they want this to get updated.
So were we able to contribute any way, or are there other things that
Well, I
we
think
should
so.
discuss?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're happy to listen if you wanted to add or change or advise in a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, your comments you've shared tonight are great. I mean, if you have any others.
I have
We have it on the record, we'll have minutes. you know.
As we were talking, I have 3 questions and I don't
Okay.
know, I'd imagine you probably have this addressed in there, but does it mention the material that is used, whether it's the vinyl fence? Is it going to specifically talk about the material? I see the current one talks about a chain link being 10 feet as long as like a tennis court.
Yeah, that allows for a sport court, and I think it's higher than that. I think it might be 12, or maybe it is.
I was
10,
thinking
a
it was
little bit
10,
higher for a
maybe it
sport
is.
court. For a sport court, but it really doesn't get into materials on fencing.
Cause that's
That
usually
I-
controlled by
that I
the
remember
CCNRs,
you-
right?
Yeah.
It
subdivision.
doesn't, and the council, they briefly covered that and they decided to stay away from finished styles and materials.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I shared with them with my previous history with Ivans, they outlawed the gray unfinished concrete, so they either had to put the element in to have an exposed aggregate or a stain or a colored concrete. But right now, with the contemporary colors being so popular, gray block and gray concrete it's a demand. People really want that. So as unsightly as this might be, we're seeing a lot of gray. I mean, it's a better finish than this, but we're seeing a lot of that out in the field.
I think we can encourage folks when they come in. but-
And the other thing I will add
Yeah.
for your review, of course, will be that the fencing materials are manufactured and listed to be installed in a fencing application. something along those lines, the language, so we don't see the pallets and
Pallet
tires
fence.
and unsightly things.
So what about
Unsightly
shrubs and hedges?
We want to steer clear of enforcing anything with that, but we do have in our site
In this
visibility,
ordinance.
yes. In our site visibility areas, we will restrict everything. There shouldn't be anything over 2 feet, like on a corner lot with the 30-foot triangulated area.
Right,
They would be restricted to. not
and we talked
anything
about
over
that.
2 feet.
That came up last week. You get shopping centers that have matured in other areas and the HOA, you know, in the case of a commercial group, they're not taking care of the landscaping. They're letting things grow too high in the area where you're accessing the project, you know, your drive aisles or lanes, so they need to cut that down. So we keep that site
So is
visibility
that
in
under
that triangle
landscape
area.
ordinance? Cause
Yeah,
you could
that's
grow
where it should be
oleanders
addressed.
and make
Yeah,
a giant
yeah.
wall out of an oleander shrub and.
Yeah, we just think the hedges and the landscaping belongs in a different section, landscaping, so we'll have to come back and put some of that in there.
Those are the only.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, with walls and retaining walls, height would vary greatly for me to approve something or feel more comfortable if there was landscaping involved. You know, that's
Yeah.
one thing that,
Yeah,
you know, especially if got to the point where it came to us.
Yeah.
If there was something involved in a design of.
well, if we're not in
We're
a
gonna
site
have-
visibility area, I'm not worried about it,
Yeah.
you know, that's gonna look great and help it blend in and soften.
But I'm saying
So,
even this
yeah.
situation there was
Yeah.
where there are certain circumstances where it's not all cookie cutter. You know,
Right.
you got steeper hills with elevations.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about the hills. They've got those giant retaining walls to make those lots work,
Yeah,
to make them sellable.
yeah,
And to probably get a premium for them. They're raising them up and they're
yeah,
putting those walls, but there should be some way that we could require them to have some sort of a, you know.
And we
Better
did that
appeal.
with Jim's RV, when that came in and there was such that dispute over Jim's RV, we talked about the
The
landscaping in there on that backside because that was a.
And no wire, no razor wire. That should be outlawed in the whole city.
so we have a site section and we're amending that as well. Basically, it's public utilities or facilities for safety purposes only. We don't want people using that in commercial areas or residential areas.
Okay.
You know, for a cell tower, a public utility, there's certain things that they'd be allowed to have, but it'd be very limited.
Okay.
So that's a concern as well, so.
And then this will come back once it's finalized, once you guys have it, comes back to us for us to recommend to the city council.
It does. We need to bring it back as a public hearing item because it's a change to city code.
Okay.
So we would have a public hearing. I don't know when that's going to be yet because we're still having discussions. I know some would like us to bring it back in December and have the council adopt something in January. But I can't be specific on those dates yet. We're just sharing and updating with our bosses and then we'll, you know, kind of go up the flagpole and see where this is. But you could see it in December. There's a possibility if we're directed to do so, because I know this has been an issue for some time.
First, you said you had 3 items, material, what were the
And
other?
that, so the one was the material, the other one was the color but we discussed that, color of the block, so.
Yeah,
And then that third one was if this was gonna regulate like an oleander or a
Yeah.
hedge, if you could use landscape shrubs as or consider that as a wall, which it
That's
doesn't really.
that's challenging because you could have a tree there. I mean, you'd almost have to be explicit on what type of vegetation you would allow. Because oleander, absolutely, that it's gonna knock out solid, but are you going to restrict a tree, a mature tree that kept trimmed up over 6 or 8 feet? Is that obtrusive or a site?
Yeah, you could do cypress trees, you know, those little round
Yeah,
trees.
Cause you see
See
them.
those in a row, you see those too,
You
you
see
could actually
those.
create a fence out of cypress trees.
In fact, we have one up by Santa Clara Elementary. They have one, and those things are like 4 foot around and they've created a barrier from the sidewalk all the way down to the back of the property line.
I've
It's
trimmed
a-
those before.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. And the materials too can be mixed, so we have 4-foot wall and then 2 or 3 foot of wrought iron or something,
Sure,
you know, they do that a
sure.
lot, so, and that can't.
we've been
max
asking some people
over
to do that, to
7
have pools and stuff. Why not do the solid with the wrought iron, you know, rather than
Yeah.
such a high wall?
We have that
So,
at Heritage Point, the new
Yeah.
home development just
yeah,
east
right
of
up the
Lamb.
street. Yeah,
They will fill that in with wrought iron.
Yeah, you can see the voids right now cut
Yeah.
out that are.
I think it's.
But
gonna
I'm
look
saying,
really nice.
you can't do a 6 foot and then do a 3 foot wrought iron on top,
Sure,
you can't.
yeah, they could do a
Or
mixed
9
fence
foot.
that had yeah, they could do a mix of fence.
Okay.
if they wanted to, as long as it didn't exceed 9 feet.
Has to, 9 feet.
The other thing that will
9 foot
probably.
without elevation change? Or you'd have to have enough, so you'd have
You
to
have to
have
have
3 foot
elevation
retaining,
change,
3 foot
yeah.
of wall, and 3
The
foot.
way it reads, because that way everybody's gonna make man-made grade to get what they want, and I don't think that's great. You guys, by governor's order, a lot's been talked about the drought this last year. I know they're, having a discussion tonight. There's been other discussions with the Conservancy District. I don't know if they're gonna roll out a model ordinance or, certain specifications they want the communities to adopt. I'll find out more tomorrow. It would be great if all the communities adopted something similar, and we'll see where all that's going, but we may be asked to bring that to you next month as well in December, because it's been a minute on that. We've been trying to get something done statewide. I know up north, some of the communities I was working with, we adopted some of those ordinances. Some communities have done that already. And so they're looking to get ordinances adopted down here, for drought tolerant, water efficient landscaping and lower usage of water. It could entail a lot of things, not just outdoor water, but, internal fixtures and things of that nature. I don't know if that's going to be this ordinance, but that was discussed during last year's legislative session. That could come back next year. The builders, some are on board and others may not be, because it costs a little bit more, but guess what? If there's no water, you can't build, right? There needs to be water. So those are the two things that come to mind for next month, but we'll be in touch.
And if all of the neighboring
Yeah.
cities are all similar.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to
Yeah.
enforce if everyone's on the
Well,
same
it
page.
helps the builders and those, because a lot develop in multiple communities. It helps them if there's a standard they can design to. Consistency, transparent consistency, so.
I live up there by Red Mountain.
Mhm.
And so it's interesting because they built some new homes in there. And so what you have is you have one that looks like a golf course. And the next one is their escaped.
Yeah,
And so that goes to your point, which is I think if the city adopts something,
mhm.
and we all know that's what it is, it puts us all on kind of an equal playing field, right? Where if
Yeah.
you guys have this lush green place and we have this old rocky thing,
Yeah.
we're next door neighbors, our place looks like a dump.
Yeah, and it could be they tell us a percentage, I don't know,
Yeah.
right? If they say 10% on a half acre lot, that's 2,000 square feet. I've heard some restrictions even, more restrictive than that, 750 square feet total. Our home, just as an example, I think I have 750 or 1,000 maybe in the front and the back. I have 2 sod areas and that's it. Everything else is, drought tolerant, dripped. That's the way they did it.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it's gonna come to, but it looks good because a lot of the neighborhood has that, but if you go to other like you're saying. Yeah, so we'll see what we're told to do.
And then what do they do to make
So-
that like retroactive? What do they do for the old folks down here? You just let it.
We really can't.
Yeah.
Next
I mean,
building.
Yeah, and it can be, some of them over time will, like a new owner sells.
Yep.
Or they decide they want to save on their water bill, they'll start pulling stuff out, because we've seen that too. Because I looked at a couple of homes here in Santa Clara and they had sports turf. There was no sod, it was all drought tolerant, and one had this great backyard, green year round, it was all sports turf.
The only way that can be
Backyard, so-
regulated is if the city adopts an ordinance on days to water. And we
Yeah.
end up, that's
Yeah.
really the only way the city
Yeah.
could control
We
that.
do
is-
have the ordinance that limits to
Restrict.
10 between 10 at night till 8 in the morning, or 8 at night till 10 in the morning.
It's 10 and 8.
Yeah, that was just put in place in June. We do have that, so.
One thing the Conservancy District is exploring is incentives to free up some of your sod. They're buying so many square feet, or they're offering incentives to use a different type of sprinkler head that's more water conscientious. So I'm sure we'll see more of that in the future.
And I think, I had a house in Sandy years ago. I did this. I replaced my park strip and I put plantings and dripped, and everybody liked it. And other people on the street started doing it too. It was kind of cool.
The other thing
So,
they're exploring is a hot water recirculating line in all homes. making
Oh,
that
yeah.
mandatory, so you don't have to stand there
Yeah.
and wait for
But
30
it's some of the
seconds.
fixtures too, right? They have to use certain fixtures.
We're
Yeah.
looking at putting a on-demand water heater in our home in another place because it literally takes
So
like
long.
8 minutes or something nutty to get hot water all the way to the
Don't
back.
tell my wife that because our home, it takes it a few minutes. It takes 2 to 3 minutes for the
Just buy one of
shower
those
to go
on-demand
warm.
hot water heaters, don't be a cheapskate.
Yeah, we have,
Chad.
well, we
Get
just
it
did a
installed.
water softener. I'm trying and we're working on window coverings. You know, the builder took what I offered. He said, no water softener, no window coverings, no. So I said, hey, I can buy a lot for the, if you take this price, you know, this, we'll
Well,
do
you know,
it ourselves.
What's interesting about that water thing, my wife and I are doing a project up
Yeah.
by Three Peaks in Cedar City. Where we're capturing our water on a little, it's a shipping container
Mm.
that we're doing. We're just doing it as an experiment. Cause we're planning on building a home up here in the Heights. It's not a shipping container home, so
That's
don't look
really
at me
cool.
like that.
No, I'm listening
But,
because you piqued my interest because my folks went and lived on the Big Island of Hawaii for 3.5 years and Kona, they had catchment systems.
Yeah,
My dad did the pump and all the work on it. We went and visited them twice. No one else did, so they moved back because that's a long way
that's a
to
long
move.
way.
But yeah, my dad was all into that, so it's interesting to hear you say that.
Well, what's interesting is there's no water. We have no
Yeah,
water, electricity
right,
out there, so we're
right.
doing composting toilets.
Mhm.
It's all off-grid
Mhm.
solar and stuff, but
They do that on the Hilo side.
yeah. But I'm thinking about how that applies to Santa
Yeah.
Clara is that if we just captured the water off of our house,
Mhm.
you get about 6. What is it? The math is 0.6 gallons per square foot of roof.
Mm.
So if you have a 2,000 square foot home, you could get 1,200 gallons a year just off your roof.
Wow,
That's a lot of yard
it is,
watering.
it is. It is.
So anyway.
Well, great discussion. Thank you, everyone, tonight. I think we had one more item on the minutes. On the
Review of
agenda.
the minutes.
Yeah, I think that's all we have, but
Yeah.
this point is review the minutes and we did see a error in one of the sentences.
Did
Okay.
I get your name spelled right, Shelley? That was- I know
This time,
that's-
yeah.
Yes.
She's gonna check that, right?
So it's at the top of page 6. It's talking about the recombining of lots 20 and 21, Blair Circle. Anyway, the sentence that is troubling is Mr. Carlson reported that clay will be used.
Down one.
Top of
Up,
page
up,
6.
right,
Yep,
there.
right there.
So it's the second
Oh,
sentence.
yeah.
So see that
no.
reported that clay will be
Yeah,
used,
that
that
sentence,
should be, I think it's reported that piers
Yes,
would be used is what he said.
because of the history of the area.
Yes.
Yeah,
There's some,
we don't want clay.
We have enough clay already.
Yeah.
We don't need to bring any in.
there is a reference to recommended pier construction in the next sentence, but it's that one that probably should just.
Okay, we'll make sure that's fixed. Thank you for getting that, yeah.
So do you need a motion?
Please.
I motion that we approve the minutes with that correction.
Okay.
That's second.
Okay, we have the motion to approve the minutes and a second. Do I need to state names on who?
No, I'm good, I got it.
Okay. And all in favor? Is that?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I guess so it stands unanimously. Do we have any other items that need to be discussed?
I do not tonight.
So
Just back to the wall. Did you have comments, Shelley? Are you good with what we covered?
No, I'm-
James, you're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Ryan? Okay,
I'm good.
perfect.
I think walls are way complex.
Yeah.
I think every situation is a different scenario, and I think there should be a little variation, and I like
There'll
the
still
idea that
be
people
some
can come in and talk
flexibility, yeah.
about walls if it becomes it's not an automatic no, that has to go beyond, and we have to discuss it and see if we can make it work.
Gives us parameters to approve and let them move forward, or in unorthodox events, they can. take it
and
to
we're
this
on
level.
for the 9th of December, the normal schedule.
Yes, we will be open. If you wanna. adjourn.
Motion to.
Yes, motion to adjourn the meeting. Thanks for everybody coming and discussion night.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Nice
Good to meet you.
Jim.
Yep, good to meet you as well, James.
Thank you.
This has been fun. Well, we had those
We've got a lot
several
going
guys
on.
for so long, we
Yeah.
were getting ready to run them out of
Yeah.